welcome to CurveBall DFI-ed. I'm your host, David Iofi, and on our 12th podcast, we have the pleasure of having Laura Bell. Laura got a degree in computer science and artificial intelligence at Oxford University. Throughout the years, she worked in some nonprofit organizations, as well as some private organizations focusing on cybersecurity aspects of computer science. In today's podcast, we will learn how Laura became the CEO and founder of Safe Stack Academy, which is a website that teaches people of all ages to learn about cybersecurity. Thank you again, Laura, so much for coming onto our podcast today. We briefly described a little bit about what you did in the past, kind of what you're doing right now. Can you talk a little bit more about like a background that you think shaped you to kind of have like this entrepreneurial mindset that you have?
Sure. It's always strange when you hear somebody describe your background because it always feels so clean and crisp, like it happened like A, B, C, D, but it never happens like that for any of us. When I was young, before high school age, I thought I was going to be a lawyer. I thought I was going to be Ally McBeal, which ages me really badly as a cultural reference, but whatever. And I thought I was going to go live in Europe and I was going to save the world using law. I don't really know how that works. But a lot of other things happened, as they do. And I actually found myself as a software development apprentice when I was 16. So I learned on CurveBall, rocking it old school, even in the early 2000s. And to be honest, I think what set me up for being an entrepreneur is ever since then, I've had a bit of I've kind of always had to figure things out. I'm a problem solver. I'm from a big family of problem solvers and tinkerers and the people who want to know how things work and pull it apart. And I've also always needed to kind of find a pathway. I didn't have a lot of support around me. So I've kind of always tried to say yes to adventures. So I've worked at some amazing places all around the world. And I have also tried to always be brave and say, look, if I want to do something, if I've got an idea and a belief, then I should do that and give it a shot and try really hard rather than wait 5 years, look back and go, well, what if I'd done that? And I think when you combine all of that mess together, you end up with somebody who about 7 years ago has a baby and decides it's a great idea to rage quit a job and start a company. And now we're, going global and we're, a SaaS product company. So yeah, it's been a crazy adventure, but I think the one that I'm supposed to be on.
I think that a lot of things that we do learn, and in a previous podcast, we had Jordan Kelly, the founder of Enter Health. He kind of spoke to us about his entrepreneurial journey, how he was like super motivated and hungry, and then he had a kid, and then his life kind of all changed. Then he found this new motivation. So you kind of touched upon it. Could you talk a little bit more about how your creativity changed once you did have a child?
Cool. Well, I now have two. So I think that just means that I was really bad at remembering the pain the first time around. I have a 3-year-old and a 9-year-old. And so my 3-year-old is chaos on legs. She is, she's the child who climbs a tree and then tries to figure out how gravity works afterwards. And my eldest, my 9-year-old, is very analytical and she's a reader. She's very creative. And I think what it means to me is I don't believe in that 10x hustle culture where you have to work 400 hours a week. And that for me is not a sign of that you're doing the right thing. When you've got kids or when you've got anything in your life, whether it's a pot plant you have to look after or a hobby that you're really super passionate about or an older person that you care for, when you run a company, every decision you make is about priority. It's about, is my time best served here or here right now? And when you're a parent, at least in my case, the decision is quite a clear one. So if I'm going to invest some time in my company because we want to grow or because I want to do a thing, I'm weighing up, okay, does being away from my family right now outweigh this? And it's always a bit of a balance. And that means that I'm not wasting time. I'm really very focused. I work 7 hours a day, no more than that, 5 days a week, which is a stupidly small amount of hours, especially for those Americans who are listening. But I'm ruthlessly effective in that time because the rest of the time belongs to someone else.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something that recently I have learned to do. Being in a relationship, working 60 hours a week doesn't really mix well. So it's kind of like those 60-hour weeks have to now turn into like 40, even sometimes 30-hour weeks. And I'm kind of using that new mindset that you are talking about where it's like, you have only a limited amount of time. Now, what is the most important thing that I have to get done? what could I ask other people to do, and kind of
Exactly.
surrounding yourself around with like the team members that are able to kind of sustain certain things. And obviously
Oh,
those
so
team
much.
members are super important. What do you think is one of those like what do you look for when you're looking for team members and people to join your journey?
There's lots of things. I think more than skills, it's cultural fit. There's 17 of us now at SafeStack, and we're really quite diverse for a security company. We have 75% are women. We have people ranging from 22 to 59. So we're kind of a big spread. We're from all over the world, which is really nice. But what it means is when I'm looking for people, I'm looking for people who can, they know what they're good at, they know their superpower, but they also know that, especially working for a young company, every day is a school day. Every day we are going to fall over, skin our knees, and have to pick ourselves up and figure it out all over again. And so I'm looking for those people who don't see that as something that's going to challenge them and make them feel too vulnerable so they don't want to engage, that they see that as like, okay, cool, we can do this. And then we support each other in doing that. I'm the first to admit I have no idea what I am doing most days, because running a company is literally a boot camp in
Yeah.
making stuff up and hoping it all comes together as a business. There's a little bit of strategy in there and there's a lot of tools you can pull from, but having a team that appreciates and can see that it's okay to not know, and it's okay to learn, and it's okay to support each other, that's really important for me.
Yeah, I mean, working with like-minded individuals also always makes your life easier, especially in those team meetings, talking about those bad things and the good things, especially with people that you don't necessarily want to be working with, is always tough. But if the person does want the company to succeed and wants it to grow, then him hearing like the negative feedback is really important. At Team DFI, we are a relatively new company. Every single person that's working on the project, we all kind of have like this common goal and see the bigger picture of us being able to help those early stage founders. And looking back at looking in 10 years in the future, we could look back and be like, isn't it so cool that are friends with like the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world? Like, I think that that's kind of like our ultimate goal, and we're trying to help in any way possible, because I think that as a young person, having those network relationships is something super important. And definitely as a founder yourself, those relationships sometimes do develop into business relationships, or you may know somebody who knows somebody, and kind of word of mouth spreads. And when you're that type of person, that is what you want to kind of have. And you want people to know, like, this is what he is, no matter where they're from. And kind of being from the southeast part of the world, you're definitely isolated from Europe, some of like the Americas. How has that affected your startup journey?
I think one of the things you'll see as a theme for founders from the Asia Pacific region, particularly Australia and New Zealand, because we are very far from everywhere. It's beautiful,
Yeah.
please come visit, and we're always hiring, but it's very, very far. We also have a lot less capital available to us because the big markets for capital, such as the US, they are quite inward looking in many respects. Now, less so because of COVID, but in many cases, there are enough innovative companies in their own country that they don't need to look elsewhere, and that's fine. We understand that. Now, that means though, our companies operate really fast and lean. So, for example, you look at seed rounds in the US. The seed round in the US could go up to $10 million depending on the idea, and it's not unheard of for that to be at very early revenues. Now, that is starting to correct again now as the market adjusts, but we're still seeing a pattern. In New Zealand, a seed round is normally about 1.5 million New Zealand dollars, which is about 1 million USD. Now, when you're trying to hit the same kind of targets as a New Zealand company and you've got a tenth of the money, you get really creative in solving problems and making sure that you're not wasting anything. So we're really, really good at making amazing things out of basically good intentions and duct tape.
That's like the whole that whole mentality there. One of my favorite shows is like the Australian Shark Tank, and kind of the way that like everybody's like the Aussie pride. And I think that that refers not only to like the people in Australia, I think that all the people from that region, because the ingenuity and kind of like the rest of the world not kind of focusing on startups from that side of the world makes investors and inventors kind of think completely differently. And kind of when an investor from the Australian region finds a good start that they believe in from that side of the world, it maybe takes a shift and everything gets a lot better. I wanted to know
Absolutely.
a little bit, yeah, I wanted to kind of talk about, so obviously you spoke about how you have to do less with more, and obviously it is very difficult to adjust, and especially when you did have a job and once you did start having kids, you took that risk. What made you think that the risk was going to be worth it at the end of the day?
So part of it's about me as a person, I think. So my idea of wealthy, now that doesn't mean that I'm not motivated, please. I'm one of the most driven people I've met. It's annoying. But my idea of wealth is having a roof over your head and food on the table. That's my baseline. I don't have any, I don't need to drive a Tesla today. I don't need to be fancy. Now, it also means that one of my priorities is kind of keeping it stable and safe for my family. I'm the only income in my family. There's nobody else. And I look after two children, my husband and my mother-in-law, who is very elderly. So when I was making that call, I had to have the belief that what I was seeing was right. And part of that is kind of, it's a confidence thing, but not in that ego sense. It's in a, understanding what your strengths are and trusting your judgment, which I think, we all have those moments where we're like, we can see a problem in the world and we think we might be able to solve it. And not all the time, but some of the time, you're absolutely right. And it's just knowing when to trust that instinct and run with it and what the risk is if you're going to do it. For me, I know that as a security professional, if it all goes wrong, which hopefully it won't for a very, very long time to come, I can always go back and get another job. And, because my barrier for success, for happiness, is quite pragmatic, I'm okay with that risk. I think if I was the type of person who needed, a seven-figure salary and la 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 la, you probably wouldn't take a startup risk at the moment because there are other ways, particularly in technology, to make that kind of money without the risk.
I think that you're kind of a little bit underselling SafeStack. I think that SafeStack definitely has the potential of bringing in those values in the future, not more than that.
I'm absolutely underselling it. And, you talk about, your culture bringing things with you. I was born in Britain and we're taught from a very young age to apologize for all things, even if it's not a problem. It's like our most popular early word is, I'm sorry. Whereas if you're brought up in America, that confidence, that ability to sell yourself is something you're taught really young. Yeah. And so, our company's grown from 200K ARR to almost 700 in the last 12 months. So, it was a 300% growth. We've got 9,000 learners in 7 countries. So yeah, we're rocking it out, but we're also really realistic that the world is big and we're small and we can't rest on our successes so far. We need to keep pushing.
I think that the humble approach is always good. And definitely when you are humble, it makes people want to talk to you more and ask you for advice. I did want to get to know a little bit more. We did talk a little bit about SafeStack. Obviously, it's in the cybersecurity sector. What made you focus on the cybersecurity world and kind of how did you get involved with it?
Sure. I started off as a software engineer, as I mentioned earlier. And one of my natural kind of abilities was to find bugs in things. I was really good at breaking stuff. I think I was that kid who, when you give them a new toy, they try and press all 10 buttons at once and see what happens, or what happens if I throw it out of a window. I always wanted to know those questions. Now, that makes you really good in the security space because you're really good at understanding unusual edge cases and unusual systems. Now, I went on from being a software engineer to being a penetration tester. So I tested systems professionally, looking for the security flaws in them. And I was good at that too. But what I noticed was that I was seeing the same problems again and again and again. Nothing ever changed. We were building the same software in the same way and getting the same flaws. And so my thesis was that we could change the way we built software so that we could bring security in from having a crazy idea right the way through the life cycle, rather than just waiting to the end to test it. And so SafeStack is born of the idea that people like me, security specialists, actually, we want to make ourselves redundant. The future of application security belongs to engaging with the 32 million software developers around the world and giving them the skills and ability and passion to anticipate and solve security problems, just like they would scaling or performance or usability. It's part of building high quality software. It's not a special thing at the outside. And so that's what we do. We give Courses, qualifications, hands-on labs, and a community that brings together engineers so that they can collaborate and solve these problems together.
And what you guys are doing is amazing and definitely does take a risk to start a company, especially from that part of the world. But I think that the value that you guys are bringing is immense and definitely does help a lot of people in the long term. It's just people accepting that they need help sometimes is difficult, but I think once they do get to that point, it'll be a lot better. I wanted to know a little bit about how has education played a role in your startup journey, kind of working first for like a bigger startup, quitting your job. How has that education helped you get into where you are?
So education for me is really interesting. I made it because I went and did my degree. So I did that a little bit later than most because I was self-funding. So I did my qualifications in night school and then I went off to university. And I made myself a promise I would study for passion and not profit. And so that's why I studied AI and robotics, which at the time was not a career path. Nowadays it is, but back then it really wasn't. And it was fascinating. I got to work with the engineers who designed Mars rovers. It was really cool. And what it gave me was this curiosity. It gave me, the formalized skills are important, but for me, the really important bit was that excitement of how amazing technology can be. We're living in a time where people are literally building the tech systems that will send somebody to Mars, or that can diagnose cancer early, or that can design the ultimate Lego minifigure. Who knows? It's the technology being built today is far beyond even what fiction authors of 50 years ago were writing about. And I think education for me gave me that freedom to think about and explore that excitement rather than just launching into technology focused on one organization. And I think that's education's role. It isn't there to say, hey, you built an ugly baby, you should feel bad, here's how to make a better baby. It's about how to see the world and all of the potential in it and bring your skills to that. So security has always been a big part. I've been a teacher, I've been a student. I've taught everyone from 5-year-olds in China how to speak English, right the way through to college professors and how to think about AppSec and how to break into banks. I think it'll always be a big part of me.
I think that definitely what you mentioned about how in the past we thought the future, like we would never seen anything like this. Even in Back to the Future, they thought that all we would have like nowadays is like self-tying shoes, but we have much more than self-tying shoes. And I think that that's like one of those things where it's like you have to go to school kind of like to pick out what's new and you kind of use those skills and you use a little bit. But I think that the real world is where you learn your skills. But I think that in college is kind of where you test it out. You did mention about how you teach English to people in China and how you're very much in like the education side. And we noticed that you work with a lot of nonprofits. Could you talk a little bit more about what got you to working with nonprofits and how you choose which ones you work with?
I do work with a lot of nonprofits. Partially it's because I'm mission driven. So I spent some time working for the British government doing counter-terrorism, counter online harm. And you get to be very focused on helping, on making the world a little bit of a better place. And nonprofits, one of the reasons I work with them is they're very mission driven too. And they are often underfunded, under-resourced, but they have the same challenges as everyone else. So trying to make security equitable, so available to all organizations, whether they're big or small, is really, really important to me. I don't want security and being safe to be something you can only do if you've got a huge budget to spend. How do I choose them? No, I'd love to say there was a scientific process, so that would be an absolute lie. Mostly it's, understanding the founders, the people who work there, what the mission is, how it aligns with our values, and kind of taking it from there. I've got a real soft spot for helping people into careers. So people who have come from non-traditional backgrounds, so maybe they couldn't go to college, or maybe, they had kids young, or maybe they're older and returning to the workforce. I like to try and help those as a priority.
I think that helping is one of the things that makes you succeed in the world. Personally, at Team DFI, we have an intern program where we try to place high school students, give opportunities that they wouldn't have. And I think giving back is how you ultimately fulfill yourself as a whole. Whether it doesn't matter what religion you are, most religions, they always talk giving back. And I think that that's because it makes you feel better as a person. One thing that I think that the audience could tell, as well as doing a little bit research into your background, is that you're really good at talking to people, doing events. How do you prepare for events and how do you host them?
That's something I've worked on over time. Believe it or not, I think I did my first conference talk about 10 years ago. And I said the word trust me, or the phrase trust me, I think 40 times in 30 minutes. I was so nervous. It was ridiculous. And now I do quite a bit. I talk on podcasts like this, and I do conference talks, and I run private events for the community. Now, for me, it's about authenticity. People connect with stories when those stories come from a place of honest truth and where they're human, where there's vulnerability. I'm not the person to stand on the stage and say I have all of the answers to a thing, but I am a storyteller, and I get that from my mom. She was a type of person who would sit on a bus and within 5 minutes had met a stranger and been invited over for dinner. She was just really naturally good at connecting with people and connecting with people's stories. And so that's what I do. I take what can be a really negative and intimidating area of security, and I make it something human, and I connect with people that way. And I think that for me is how this works and how it will work for anyone else who wants to get into that space.
Definitely. I think that experience definitely does help. And we had previous guests on the show where they kind of talk about how all you need is like that first good podcast, the first good event, and it builds up your confidence. And then you're able to come up with questions, you're able to answer questions. And even when somebody does throw you a curveball, no pun intended, it definitely does. Your experience does build up and your confidence does grow and you're able to do certain things. What do you think makes your company SafeStack stand out from other programming websites?
Sure. We are a little bit different. We don't quite fit anywhere, and I love that. We are what we call systems agnostic. So that means that, there are companies out there who write in Java, who write in CurveBall, who write in PHP, who write in all sorts of languages. And in fact, most organizations write in dozens of languages, if you kind of look at the whole massive system they're building. We sit at a different layer than that. We believe that actually the problems that are caused in security, it doesn't matter what language you're in. They come from the same root causes. They come from the same design decisions, architectural decisions. And so we connect with people whether they are at the bleeding edge of technology or whether they're still supporting some code that somebody wrote 20 years ago. They still need to work with us. And so we come and we listen and we try and give them options regardless of how modern their technology is and how fast-paced their organization is. Not every organization is like Netflix. In fact, very, very few are. Less than 10% of organizations are in that really high, bleeding edge space. Most of us are just figuring it out, and we're doing the best. So we're a bit unusual like that. We're also unusual for a security company because we will never sell on fear. We're not here to say the world is going to hack you and you should feel bad, especially for our younger customers who are high growth companies. There are 50 monsters in their world. Security is one of them, but it's not the one that's going to kill them first. So we're there to help them grow and help them become what they're supposed to be, help them sell to bigger organizations who require more maturity. We're not there to tell them the world is terrifying. They know that already.
I think that the fact that you guys are able to resonate with people and kind of put everything into perspective definitely does make you guys different and makes other people want to work with you guys more.
Yeah.
Obviously, getting the right people and getting clients is all about networking. Can you give a little bit of like tips and tricks of kind of what you use to get into those rooms and meetings with those powerful people?
Sure. Firstly, the thing that I learned the hardest way, I think, is being bold and asking. Now, I'm not well connected. I'm from a place in the UK that is known basically for industrial jobs. We're not a community of people who go and meet powerful people. It's just not how it works. And so it took a long time for me to realize it was okay for me to just ask people, to just, write emails and write letters and make phone calls and go meet people at conferences and just say hi. And a lot of the time, as long as you're genuine and authentic and you're not trying to, sell them hard on something that's nothing to do with them, they just like being human and connecting with other people. So that's been really useful, but it took me a long time to get to that. It's something I wish I'd learned earlier on. And I'd say for networks, again, part of being down in New Zealand and Australia is it's harder for us to connect with organizations overseas. And so I'm going to use this opportunity to kind of, remind everyone that doing introductions for people is also a superpower. So if you're one of those people who has these networks and connections, make the offer. Say, hey, can I introduce you to so-and-so? Because when people aren't naturally connected, that help really makes a big difference.
I think that helping is one of the best things that you could possibly do because it's very low risk and very high reward. Even if you don't get anything right away, who knows what the future holds? And you're giving somebody something and they're going to be grateful for you for a long time. And it's just like the right thing to do. So you did touch upon a little bit about how you made mistakes in the past that you wished you could have overcome. Could you talk a little bit about your first big mistake in the cybersecurity world and kind of how you overcame
I feel like I'm in a job interview. Okay, all right, no pressure, team. Please don't look at my LinkedIn now and start tracing things back. That gets really awkward. In all seriousness, I think it's really hard to pick out a single mistake because we make mistakes all the time. I think some of the mistakes I made more frequently than I should have were about not trusting my gut, particularly in hiring people. Hiring, particularly when you're a young company, is super hard. And if you're a 1,000-person company, you hire one bad person, its net impact is quite small. When you're 10 people and you hire one bad person, that's 10% of your workforce that's actively harming your company. That's not a good plan. So, getting better at my hiring and finding ways to really judge character and culture and skills is definitely a work in progress. I think early security mistakes, oh my goodness, there are so many. When you do security, one of the things you're doing, you're looking for vulnerabilities. So you're pushing all the buttons and going, well, I wonder what happens when this happens. And what if I send this when it's expecting that? Or, all right, it's like when a kid puts a sandwich into a DVD player. Nothing good is going to come from this, but it's got to be tested at some point. I've taken down production systems when I was a junior tester, interrupted a TV signal once. Not common things, but things that definitely stuck with me. Where, sometimes I think when I was younger, that enthusiasm can sometimes be greater than the skill. And I think we all have that when the early stages of our career. So it's taken me a while to kind of find that balance between being curious and experimental and enthusiastic and being a little bit more cautious and reserved so that I make sure I don't make those mistakes, at least not twice.
Definitely. Thank you so much for touching on the mistakes. You went very much into detail. Most people kind of say like, oh, I made like this little problem. And then it turns out that like people are more shy to talk about like their mistakes, but I think entrepreneurs are kind of more open about it because entrepreneurs know that other entrepreneurs also make mistakes. And when you do talk about your mistakes, maybe other people could avoid them. And I think at the end of the day, it's not about the mistakes that you make because you're always going to make mistakes no matter what you do. It's how you overcome the mistakes that makes the best entrepreneurs from the ones that never become entrepreneurs. What advice would you give? Yeah. Okay.
Go for it. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No. I wanted to know a little bit more. I wanted to get into it and kind of talk about what advice would you give to somebody with a client-facing role?
Brush your teeth. That's a really strange question. What advice would I give someone to a client-facing role? There's tons of generic advice out there. I would ignore 90% of it. Smile when you're on the phone and all like that. No, just be you. If you're in a client-facing role, it's normally because you like being around humans and you like connecting with others. If you're in a client-facing role and you don't like that, get a new job. Being in a client-facing role is about connection and it's about communication. So it's the most important thing you can do. And I think the one thing that we take it from psychology, we take it in security as well, but it's being consistent. So if you're the type of person who says, hey, oh yeah, we should totally go to dinner sometime to a friend when you pass them in the street, that friend you haven't seen for 5 years, but you somehow always say, hey, yeah, we should totally get dinner soon. But internally you're saying, oh, holy crap, no, why did we cross paths again? Don't be that person. Be the person who says, oh, hey, we should totally get dinner sometime and sends an email next week and says, hey, let's do dinner. Don't kind of those polite things we do to each other where we dance around the fact and we kind of make these promises or these kind of statements. It's useless. It's actually really harmful. So just be straightforward. If it's great to see someone, but you probably won't see them again for a while, just say goodbye. If you want to catch up with someone and you miss them, tell them that. If you're super busy and actually I can't make it this week, but I really do still care, let's do it some other time. Be honest. It's when we don't be honest, when we're not consistent with our behaviors, that we damage our relationships.
One thing that I do find often when I am doing these types of questions is we do like to talk to founders and other entrepreneurs kind of to figure out like the type of advice that they would give. And the reason that is because there's a lot of generic answers out there online. And I think that there's different perspectives that every single person could give from their side. I think that it is important to be yourself, and a lot of people kind of do try to hide that because they're like, okay, this is a serious environment, you can't make any jokes. But I think that humor in the workplace kind of makes it seem more relaxed, and when you're doing something and you're more stressless, the work gets done better. And I think that that's why certain companies like Google, where it's like you don't even have to wear a suit, but it's like a type of job that used to be like a corporate job that every single person that has the job is in a suit. And the reason that it is because it's turned out that when you're more comfortable, you're able to produce better work. So that's like one thing that I do like to tell other people when they ask me, like, how are you able to connect with people and do this podcast, is because I'm myself, like, I don't necessarily change but I'm just very lucky that I'm very outgoing, not scared to ask certain questions. I do try to make sure that they're not too controversial because I don't want to push a person to like a certain uncomfortable situation, but definitely a sense of humor is always nice to have on the podcast. One thing that I did want to ask is, I don't understand why there aren't as many women entrepreneurs as there should be. I think that, I mean, we had previous podcasts before this, and every single time we have a woman entrepreneur, the conversation is very uplifting. Not that when we have a conversation with men, it's bad. It's just that the women are more energetic and the audience does reach out to us more, and they're like, we want more women on the podcast. We want to know more about more women entrepreneurs. Why do you think that there's a lot of women that are lacking, that are not like striving to be in this industry?
You know, there are some really very clever people who, you know, I'm standing on the shoulders of right now. So one of the organizations I work with is Springboard International. So they are a woman-led program for supporting and helping grow women-founded companies. And they've been going in the US for 15, 20 years. They're also in Australia, and I'm lucky enough to be part of their global expansion cohort. I think looking around me, there are reasons that people hold back from starting a company. Some of it can be confidence and imposter syndrome and all that kind of stuff. Some of it's access to resources and support, because not everyone happens to have enough money to do that. I started my company with $300. Again, it was not a very well thought out adventure, but you know, we are here now, so we're surviving still. So making sure that access to support and resources is equitable is really, really important. Giving founders space to be themselves is also important. I mean, one of the things I learned early on, I went to a pitching class, just like an online session, and it was all about, you know, doing your pitch to your first investors. And I was like, great, awesome, I want to do this. And the guy who was teaching said, right, okay, so you need to be wearing a t-shirt, preferably black, and jeans. And you need to put your hands in your pockets when you're presenting. I was like, what now? And he was like, yeah, this is how it works. That's, you know, the recipe for success for pitching. I was like, well, no, because what you're saying is your comfortable outfit is Mark Zuckerberg's work uniform. But for me, my comfortable outfit is a skirt I know I rock and a top that makes me feel like $1 million. And I'm going to paint my nails bright red. And it's going to make me feel like a confident, you know, strong businesswoman. And I think a lot of the stereotypes, a lot of the guidance we've got out there, we have unconscious bias in that's based on having a history of more male entrepreneurs than female. So the more that we share, the more examples we put out there that look different, that sound different, that care about different things, the more okay it feels for people to take that chance and stand up and say, yeah, screw it. I don't look like other founders. I don't sound like them. But to be very coarse with my language, fuck you, I'm coming anyway. And I think we need more of that. We need people to feel like they can stand up and be their most powerful version of themselves, whether men, women, young, old, whatever background they're from, and we'll be richer for it.
Team DFI, definitely all of us on the team. We have women representation on our team. We love working with women startups and we love having women on the show. I think that women are definitely more interesting in the way that they present themselves and they're definitely more direct when they answer questions. And I personally do think that all women are rock stars, and the ones that aren't scared to be like those alphas. Like there's like a lot of women that I feel like are scared to be like as strong and powerful as they are because they think that the men will be scared and kind of run away. But I think that strong men love strong women. And if the man is scared of the woman, there's no need for the woman to be with a guy like that. So personally, I'm very grateful that my girlfriend is very strong and pushes me every single day to the limits, because if she didn't do that and would be scared and kind of oppress those whole things, I don't think I'd be as confident as I am in myself.
There's a really funny book for anyone who's listening. It is parody, so please don't take it as literal business advice, but it's How to Succeed in Business as a Woman Without Upsetting Men. And somebody bought it me when I was in the early stages of SafeStack, and it's just a gentle, funny reminder to me that this is a whole complex world, and be you, and don't be apologetic. Women, we have some habits that do get in our way. I don't believe we should lean in and kind of, do like become imitation guys. That's really not what we need to do. One thing you can do though, audience out there, if you are listening, create spaces that are safe for women entrepreneurs to have honest conversations with other women entrepreneurs. Or diverse groups, connecting with people where it's safe to say, actually, today is hard and it really sucks and I feel like I'm failing. Having that connection authentically between them makes them stronger. Because if you feel like you always have to have your game face on, you always have to be seen to be succeeding in every conversation you have, it's really isolating. And this is how people end up feeling like their world is really rubbish compared to everyone else's, great success that's happening. And I think the more supportive we can be and the more authentic, the better.
Thank you so much, Laura, for coming on to our podcast. You've definitely answered all the questions. Very honestly, definitely not holding anything back. I really liked your answers. I kind of want to end it off, kind of ask you about what you think about certain topics and how you think that you could progress in certain areas. So the first thing that I do want to talk about is, how do you think is the best way to approach about investors?
So firstly, do your research, which everyone will tell you, but I mean, really do it. And I don't mean just read their prospectus and read their website. I mean, go talk to some founders who've worked with them. Kind of there are a lot more founders out there than there are VCs, and they all talk to each other and they all share stories of what's working and what isn't. So go talk to other people. Don't spray and pray. Don't go, contact 6 million investors and hope 3 come to you. Try and speak to the 5 that really resonate with your values and with the industry you're in. And I think you'll have a much stronger response that way.
I want to know about what you think about how old a person is relative to the job that they want to have.
I don't see any correlation at all between age and job. I'm 38. Would I have been able to do this at 23? Oh, God, no. I didn't know who I was at that point. I was, a very different person. Could I do this again at 48? I'll be a different person again. I'm going to do something new. No doubt I'm wired the same way. Maybe I'll build something else. Age is a number, which is a cliche, but it's about, the stage of life you're at and how comfortable you are in your own skin. So you do what you are ready to do at the age you're ready to do it. It's your journey, not anyone else's. So don't worry about the number.
Thank you so much, Laura, for coming on CurveBall DFI-ed. This has been an amazing episode. If you do have anything that you want to say to our audience, at the end, we'll definitely put in the links and definitely put SafeStack Academy for anybody who is interested, as well as any other links that you may want.
Yeah, I think if I was going to ask one thing of your audience, and I'm not asking to try and sell to you, I absolutely promise. What I'm trying to do is connect with software development teams across the US or across the world, really. So if you are building software and you're going fast, if you do some security, but you should do more, but you do lots and other things, I don't care where you're at maturity-wise. I'm not there to sell to you, but I want to hear your story. I'm also looking for connections in people, in companies who build amazing things. So if you are the type of person who's building the software that sends people to Mars, or self-driving cars, or self-diagnosing medical systems, come talk to me, because I'm actually collecting stories. I'm an author as well on the side, and I'm collecting stories about how we're building the amazing systems of the future and how security works in that world, because though history won't remember the security people, it's going to be a really key part of the exciting future to come. So if you're hearing any of this and you're excited and you want to have a virtual cup of tea, please do reach out, because I would love to talk to you and understand your world a bit more.